morning and welcome to Frank's School. This is the 6th year, the 178th day, and the first video. I had this on the board anyway, and I thought, you know, I might as well, rather than redraw it, I might as well explain it. Why not? I'm always working on this camera. It gives me a chance to apologize for yesterday. I know the camera wasn't right, but I'm not going to go back and redo it. Okay, and another thing about just talking about the last video I made, I forgot to mention that the old name of that village, the oldest name that locally is known, and this is an old name, is Conemaugh. But Conemaugh also is used elsewhere in Pennsylvania, so I call it Conemaugh Village. That's before it was bought by the Oppenheimers, by Norbert Oppenheimer. So I wanted to mention that. And elsewhere in my course, I give quite I don't know how many videos, where I walk around and I talk about the archaeology of Conemaugh Village in considerable detail. So if you'd use that word and you wanted to look, I think the playlist is called, well, I don't know, anyway, Conemaugh Village or archaeology or something. The population of that village, I don't believe these numbers. But I was told by an old woman who was the last that would have really heard any stuff about this, or that would have known anything, that the population was about 100. There were about 100 people lived here, and there were 400 men that worked in the mines at its peak. The 100 may be true for the village. I could imagine that. 400, boy, that seems high to me. That might have been on a bigger area of the iron mining than just what's now this farm. So I wanted to mention that. All right, and my cold, my apologies, my bloodshot eyes, my voice. I've got one of these colds that just seems to take forever to go away. Now and then, about once every 5 or 6 years or longer, I'll get that in the winter. All right, now this drawing. What I was actually working with the young fellow that's doing the architectural drawings for my book, Building with Pallets, a New Vernacular Architecture, and he's working on drawing a roof, and I had made a decision that it was hard for me actually. I decided that this distance right here should be 10 feet. In the book, I had been limiting the length of the material that I would need, or one would need, to 8 feet. I thought, I'll make it so you don't have to buy anything longer than 8 feet. But that's tricky with the rafters, because the overshot, and I had early limited myself to a 12-12 pitch. That gives a 45-degree angle. I've stuck to that. But anyway, with the shorter rafters, not only was the height here a little lower, it's still too low to stand. This is a faux cut, the way the faux cut is framed. But also the eave was shorter. And I really wanted to have closer to a 3-foot extension here on the eave. And so in doing that, we had to redraw stuff. And if this is going to be 10 foot, it turned out that that's 120 inches with 90 degrees up here at the top. Well, what would this be? And it came out to be something strong of 168 inches. We settle on 14 feet. So from here to here is basically 14 feet. These numbers, and half of that would be 80, with what we came out, was 82 inches and 3/4. That's from here to here. And there's a splice in the middle. So anyway, that explains these numbers. Now, a little bit more. Oh, and another thing, that young man who's helping me, in my mind now, I name one of the Weirs after him. I have names for everything on here. I'm going to call it Matthew Weir. That's what diverts the water that I talked about, that goes on the underside of that really high wheel. Matthew Weir. And that waterfalls and the wheel, I also name things. Well, there was a young woman that came and helped us a little bit on the roof, and I put her photograph into the book, and her name's Hannah, and I'm going to call that Hannah Falls. So anyway, I can get rid of those names. Now, this this drawing, there are things that are different about this. I say there are some innovations in the way I build. This is not exactly an innovation, but there is no ridge board. The rafters, what they do is they meet like this, and they're kept from skipping off each other like that. They're only 1x6s. I've thought about making 1x8s, but they're 1x6s. To keep them from skipping off, is that there's a cleat that's nailed along here that the rafters sit on, and that that cleat not only acts to not the pallets, 4-foot long pallets sit on those cleats, and it's not only that they hold the pallets up. The pallets also then act as bridging between the principal rafters. I don't call these rafters, I call them principal rafters, because they're not just common rafters, they do more than that. And really the stringers in the pallets that would go this way act like a little bit more like the common rafters, but they also act like bridging. So that's one thing to point out. Another thing is a real important one is rafters usually bear on the wall, on the outside wall. That's normal. Not here. I cantilever it out here, so the rafters bear out here, and it tends to spring it up. Now that's an old device used in the Middle Ages a lot, although it's influenced by the fact that I have a strut here to support it, and it's balanced by a strut on the inside, so the two struts don't have to be nailed. The two of them as a pair work as a brace, and I do the same thing over here. Now this ends up being a sweet spot, I call it, or a sweet point, where the weight ends up going down, because this is to hold up a living roof with soil 4 inches deep, and then there could be easily a snow load on top of that. So it has to be framed very heavily. Well, that weight goes down here to the sills and on. I'm not giving you a detailed explanation of the framing, but I'm going to give you some of it. Now, I had wanted the knee wall. These are knee walls. I had wanted the knee walls to be over other sweet points, which is on either side of the doorway, where also the weight goes down, so that the weight in these folk huts they're point loaded, is what you call it. It's point loading. It's not universal across the whole sill, but rather on points. And these are points as well. So you're seeing 4 points, and this would happen 4 times through the building. So there's, well, these in the center of the building, they aren't necessarily there. So there's 12 sweet points. And I had wanted the knee walls to go over that. And the knee walls I felt were necessary for 2 reasons. One, to have the span, that span from here to here, given all this weight, that I felt it needed to be supported in the middle. There's a good argument for knee walls. The other thing that the knee wall can do is it can prevent swaying this way. Now usually you use something called a wind brace on the underside of rafters to prevent racking of the roof. But the knee wall can do that as well with its bracing. But anyway, this was also a bit of a hard decision for me to move the knee wall over, because then it is not directly over a sweet point, but rather midway in that very short span. And as Matthew pointed out, yeah, but that span is really short, and that's true. And it's supported by a strut there. So anyway, I had done that. All right, what else to show you about this drawing? I guess the principal thing I wanted to show you here is about the living roof. Up here, making a school. Oh, I know what I'm talking about there. Maybe I'll say that at the end. Up here, to support the living roof, there are those pallets, but over the pallet, you're going to have to imagine this, I guess, over the first layer of pallets, I've got to have something that is impermeable to water. You might call it the real roof, what would shed water. And in living roofs, typically they'll use rubber, sheet rubber. That's expensive, and it's also not at all environmentally friendly. But you know, something that will actually shed the water no matter what happens over it. And the possibilities I have are bale wrap. That maybe is what I'm going to use. It's only 1 mil thick, and it's white. I'm impressed with that stuff. It's almost like movable layer of paint. So bale wrap is a possibility, which I would take from here down to there in rolls about like that. Roll roofing would be another possibility, if you know what that is. That might be a little expensive, but it would certainly do the job. Again, laid from, rolled out from here down to that way and here down to that way. Builder's felt tears pretty easy. You might think of it as tar paper. It would probably do. And probably the best is a kind of plastic called bunker cover. It's 6 mils or 7 thick, white on one side, black on the other. The white is important for me to put on the inside to give light as much as possible on the inside. I thought about on the outside because that way it would reflect heat back out to space, which would be basically an environmentally good thing to do. But I would put it with the white side down because it would be covered anyway. So anyway, you have that layer. And then a layer of pallets upside down. That's what I tried to draw here. The upside down pallets slung over the top by some kind of pallet hanger. It's going to be high tensile strength electric fencing wire, where I'll actually sort of hang them on wire on either side, balanced. And these little, that's to indicate the end of the stringers. Well, those ends of stringers would act like dams. They'll act like dams to hold the soil right in there. I'm showing 4 pallets. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4 pallets on each side. I think there might, that's probably about right. And right there would be a dam to hold soil. And then I'm counting, well, and the other thing I plan to do is, here's a milk container that I just, you know, recycle plastic. What do you do with these things? Well, I can put them there to hold 4 inches of soil. I'd put a hole in the bottom so it didn't just fill up with water down there. I'd let it drain. But various things to hold the soil on there. I'm not worried about being able to hold the soil. And after I plant for a while, the root system will go out through and also act to dam it up. So I think I've used my drawing enough, and the other thing I guess I'll say is that from what you've seen in these last few videos where I walked around, there is enough to build out there. It'll keep me busy for years. At the rate I'm going, working basically by myself, spending maybe $50 a week on materials, I've got plenty to build to keep me going for a very long time. Oh, and I guess this is what I was going to say. I am making a school. This is Frank's school. And the school, one of the things in the school that you can learn or teach is how do you build a village? Or in this case, well, build a village where there once was a village. It's not really so much of resurrecting an old village, because there was nothing left of the old village but a few, well, not basically nothing. How do you build a village? And that is one of the things I'm doing. All right, been hurried, but I'll quit for now.